have our final speakers today, which is Beth, and a lot of the resources that you saw today will be available on the DRI as well. So thank you for that.
Thank you. So yeah, I am here today to talk to you about the Digital Repository of Ireland, which has been mentioned a few times in some of the other talks. I'll start by saying my name is Beth Kazook. I'm the project manager for research data, and I normally work with more third-level researchers, so this is actually not my wheelhouse. And if I haven't explained anything very well, please feel free to come up and ask me afterwards or ask lots of questions during the Q&A period. So the Digital Repository of Ireland is a certified trustworthy digital repository for Ireland's social and cultural data. And I want to take that sentence there and break it down into a couple of parts. So the Digital Repository of Ireland means we are digital. We don't hold any materials in our repository. So there's no physical papers. There's no really cool objects like you might find in the library. All of our materials exist on servers, largely at Trinity College and Maynooth University. We are a certified trustworthy digital repository. We exist because we recognize that the preservation of digital materials, which you are all going to be using in creating resource packs for schools, is something that is still challenging. The repository has been around for almost 10 years now, and certainly in 2015, when we got started, the conversation, the long-term preservation of digital information was still a little bit rockier. We haven't solved it yet, but we have done a lot of work with international best practice groups, organizations like the Digital Preservation Coalition, to apply the highest quality standards for digital preservation to the materials that we hold. And we do this level of work because we are a repository for Ireland's social and cultural data. We have, at the moment, about 56 member organizations that contribute material to the digital repository. So following along from we don't really have any physical materials ourselves, a lot of organizations that don't have the capacity to preserve their digital materials digitize and give their materials to us. Now, we believe that the point of preservation is to provide access. So everything that is preserved in the Digital Repository of Ireland, with a few caveats of kind of sensitive information that we can't make totally publicly available, is available on our website. So you can access materials that you have seen on other websites, but we have kind of the preservation copy of those materials. And we also have descriptions. Quality description we think is really important for preservation as well. If you have materials that don't have descriptions that accompany them, then those materials are much more challenging to engage with. So you will also find information associated with files, like some of the maps that you have seen today, that are in our repository as well. So they are described, and they do have permanent links, reliable links that you can put into your resource packs that shouldn't disappear over time. So just to recap broadly what DRI does, we preserve historical and social digital data. We also publish third-level research data. So there's a little bit of a mix of material within our repository, and that can be a little bit of a challenge if you're going into it thinking that this is going to be kind of like a museum experience where you click on an object record and you see an image and you get a description. Some of the things that are described are data sets that have come from researchers. And that's all kind of mixed together. So collections can be research collections that are associated with research projects. Some of our members are higher education institutions, or they could be more traditional museum archival collections that are kind of described maybe in a way you're more familiar with. And again, the point of what DRI does is we make available these collections online. We publish third-level research data to make it accessible, and we publish the preserved digital objects from cultural heritage organizations. So as I briefly said, what can you find in DRI? You can find images, lots of image files. You can find textual records, some of which have transcriptions that accompany them, and some of them are just more PDFs. It kind of depends on what we get from our member organizations, because they make the choices as to what it is that they're depositing with us. We have some really fun 3D data. This has come largely from the Hunt Museum and one of the research projects associated with the Academy, the Discovery Program. So we have a number of archaeological 3D objects, and we're getting more every day because we're building capacity to engage with those objects online. We have audio files, we have video files, and then, as I mentioned, we have research data sets, which might look like things like spreadsheets, but they can be a variety of different file types. So just to take you thematically through the type of material that you might find in DRI, we have arts and culture. We have, for instance, the fashion design drawings of Sybil Connolly, which were contributed by the Hunt Museum in Limerick. There's actually quite a few of those, and those are all openly licensed and available for reuse. So similar to what I think Angela was saying about the Flickr collection from the National Library, a lot of the materials in DRI have licenses attached to them, which will tell you what you can do with those materials. And we strongly encourage all of our depositors to license things as openly as possible, so that all you need to do is credit where you got the material from. We have some photographs from theatre performances. We have from Dublin City Library and Archive, we have Balik China from the 1950s. We see some insight into the production of that material. We also have some science and businessy stuff. The An Post Museum contributed a whole bunch of stamps, which is really fun to look through. We have packaging design that was contributed by the National Irish Visual Arts Library. I don't know if some of you might recognize stag packaging from 1982. Apparently, that's what it used to look like. And then we very recently, in 2024, acquired a new member, the National Botanic Gardens, and we now have quite a substantial resource for botanical illustration. We have a number of historical and geographical collections. The Kilkenny County Council Library and Dee Maharing, who was the photographer, went around and photographed shop fronts in Kilkenny in 2021. Actually, I think the project was kind of 2019-ish, 2020, and then deposited in the DRI in 2021. So you can have a look at what shop fronts currently look like or very recently looked like in Kilkenny. We also have much more historical material, and you've seen plenty of maps, but you can also see high quality versions of maps that you can zoom in on DRI, and you're able to download those materials as well. So if you want to use them in your own presentations, it might be easier to do that in kind of an offline situation. And finally, we have humanities and social science research data, some of which is going to be more targeted to a much more academic audience, but it's not to say that you couldn't use these materials as well. This particular collection comes from a researcher who was looking at the impacts of COVID on teen mental health. And so what exists in this collection are anonymized interviews with teenagers on their experience with COVID. So I think the age group is maybe slightly higher than what you're targeting, but there will be some who will probably share some of those experiences. So what can you do with DRI collections? As I mentioned, we think the point of preservation is access, and access is to encourage reuse, to encourage ongoing cultural relevance, to encourage asking questions of our past and of our contemporary social situation. And some of that stuff doesn't necessarily have to be highly academic. Some of that stuff can be fun. So we did a project and a blog post just at the end of December at DRI. So if you do go to the DRI website, to our blog, you'll find a description here of our use of the Giphy platform. We took some still images from our collections and we put some animated stickers on top of them to kind of bring them into the 21st century. We also have advice in that blog post about how to kind of use the platform in a way that traces back to DRI, that gives credit to where these images came from in the first place, so that you can learn more about the materials and where they came from, and then just kind of experiment with what they might mean going forward, how you can engage with them differently. You can also do some very academic things with our materials as well, especially some of the collections that are organized. with really comprehensive metadata. This is a collection of Irish traditional music where it tracked the types of songs that were most popular in different regions of the world. For instance, North America is represented here, and we've got a breakdown with Canada as well called out. Or sorry, this one is specifically North America and Canada, the different types of songs. And this was done by downloading information from the DRI and putting it into something called Flourish, which is an open source platform that you plug the data in and it'll create these charts and graphs. And if you go to the website itself, the chart will move around as you interact with it. So you can highlight certain pieces and see different breakdowns of information. And I think the bulk of what I wanted to do today, or the most important part, is to actually take you to the repository and show you how to search it. So our main website, dri.ie, when you hit the landing page, you actually see a search box that will take you into the repository. So that's search the repository there. The rest of the website has a lot of blog information on it. It has some information about digital preservation, which I think is a worthwhile conversation having with people at any age. And one of the links that I put into the resource pack has an activity that I think does help to kind of introduce the importance of thinking about digital materials as materials that need to be described and organized. And it's a Lego exercise. It's called Lego for Metadata. So I highly encourage you to have a look at that. It teaches the importance of, like, basically somebody creates something with Lego and then they pass it to another group with precise descriptions. And that other group can't see what the object actually looked like. They have to follow the description. And then the kids realize, or the adults who are doing this exercise realize what they didn't describe, what's missing. Were they not able to interpret those instructions, which is just an interesting exercise. All right, there's my mouse. Let's see what happens. All right, you land on the repository website. You will be asked to accept cookies, and that sometimes takes a second to disappear. And I'm hoping that the people following along on Teams are seeing this too. So I'm on the main website here, and if I know what I want to look for, I can just head right into searching the repository. If I'm not so sure and I just want to browse, there is a button below that says Browse and Filter All Collections. You can also, from the main navigation at the top, just click on repository and it'll do the same thing. It'll take you to kind of a browse page for the collections. And we're getting another cookie notice. All right. So here you have all of the collections that are available in DRI, and it'll be the most recent ones that were added that are visible to you, but you can see you can page through quite a number of pages here and you'll get quite a number of other collections. If you wanted to browse by organization, so as I said, we have 56 members. We actually have a number of other organizations that have been members in the past and deposited something but are not currently members. And we have some community archive scheme winners that were sort of awarded a temporary deposit membership. So there's a bit more than 56 that are represented in these organizations and sponsors. But if you happen to know that an organization has material that you would be interested in, you can browse and enter their collections via this view. But if we go back to data and collections, you can click on any of the collection records here. Here's one of the collections that has been deposited by the National Botanic Gardens. Oh, come on. No. Oh, there we go. Okay, it's doing something. And you will get an overall description of what is in that collection. So you get a little bit of a history, like I said, of, why do we have this material? What is this material of? You'll get creators who contributed to the collection, the creation date, but also the date that might be more relevant to the collection material, and a number of keywords that can help you. Well, in this case, only one keyword, island of Ireland, but sometimes more substantial keywords. Then over here on the right-hand side, you will see objects in the collection, and there is 1,549 images. They happen to all be the same type. If they were of different types, you'd see that broken down into image, text, audio, and so you could click and narrow on the type of material you wanted. If you click, it's very sensitive. Okay, I think I've successfully clicked. I can see why you all did screen captures. Okay, there we go. You will get to a similar page to the one that you originally landed on, but this is only objects that are in that particular collection that you were looking at. And you can see that it's kind of refined the collection for you on the side. So we're looking at this botanical archive and we're looking at only the images within it. Then similarly, you click on any of these images and you have a little bit of detail about that specific image too. This DOI here, it's called Digital Object Identifier. This is a permanent link that is supposed to persist even if DRI doesn't. So if you click and you save that and you pop that into any of your teaching materials, you know that like 10, 20 years later, you should be able to click that link and it'll take you to the same place. It'll take you back here. Mm-hmm. If you want to download this material, now you can view it in the browser. You can also download it. There will be an agreement that says that you agree to abide by any licenses that are attached to the material, and then you can download it. Sometimes you'll see what is called here the optimized surrogate version of the asset. It means it's a little bit smaller than what they actually deposited with us, because sometimes we get really huge files for preservation purposes. There are, depending on the depositor, they might choose to make those really big files available to download too, but just know if you do click on one of those links, you probably won't download it right away. You'll get an email saying your download is ready after it's like processed the file. That's more the case, I would say, probably with 3D data, that kind of material. You can, of course, also just look at the material in DRI as well. If you want to perform a search, so let's go back to Browse by Data and Collections page. If you want to perform a search, it happens up on the upper right-hand side here, and you can click and type into things. And I can see that actually I've got a couple of prompts suggesting me here for types of things that I think Jennifer might have looked for in the past. Oh, ironic. Okay. Well, let's look at Irish Historic Towns Atlas anyway. We have one collection that happens to match that name. And then we can also, as I said, you can click into the record, read about the record, and you see the objects. I think you can also cheat and click on the object tab here, and you see all the objects within the collection immediately. If you perform a search up here and it's very particular, like for instance, I'm going to make sure I get rid of that there. I'm going to go back to collections. And let's say I want to look for Christmassy things because I was working on creating those gifts and I wanted to see if there's anything already associated with Christmas. I'm going to type that in there. And I do actually get a couple of collections that are associated that have the word Christmas in that top level keywording. Not surprisingly, On Post Museum is one of them because they'd have a lot of Christmas stamps. But I know that there's a lot more Christmassy material than probably what I'm getting from this search. So I'm going to click on the objects instead. This is one of the things about our repository database that I don't like. I like lots of things about it, but I don't like this, is that when you're doing your search, whatever level you're on is the only level it will search. So if you're on collections, it'll search collections. If you're on objects, then it'll search objects. So now I'm getting things that are coming from the Right to Water protest, for instance. That didn't appear in one of the collection level records, but one of the objects has Christmas attached to it as a subject heading. So I'm getting images. And for those of you who were maybe here at the time, Jerry Christmas and a Mary Lou year is the reason why this has been tagged as Christmas. All right. I think I'm probably, have I used up all my time?
Yeah.
We can get some questions in. And I can do more searches with you over on the side as well if you want me to. I don't know if this is a good sign or a bad sign.
I'm going to ask, you said you had partners. I used to work in Dunleary right down, and I think we deposited stuff with you.
Oh, possibly.
Yeah, but I was just wondering, does it stay also with the home? Are there any conditions around that? Would I be just attending going into their website, or what's the?
They might, yeah.
Yeah.
So for some of our members, they do have their own websites, and they do have the ability to make these materials available online. And their choice to work with DRI was really for the preservation capacity, but we put everything online as well through DRI. If they cease to be members, there is a choice where they could potentially ask to have their collections removed, but I think that's not really happened. For the most part, if they deposited collections, they wanted it preserved and they wanted to leave the collections in there. But you could probably find some of the things in DRI in more than one place. Probably your best benefit in using DRI is the ability to look at individual things with reliable permanent links. So you know that they're still going to be there. And in the collection records themselves, they usually have reuse licenses specified. Now, this particular collection was from a photographer who has a copyright on all of these materials. She's not licensed it for reuse, but that doesn't mean that actually you can't ask. It just means there's no blanket permission that has been applied to it. Many other collections will say openly licensed for reuse.